Okay, so we're going to just start the session and let people float in. My name is Hannah Poole, and I'm a journalist and the curator of the talks and debates here at the Africa Utopia Festival. Thank you very much for coming today. We've got a really exciting programme throughout the whole day, and one of the things that I have been most excited about is the session that we're about to start, which is the keynote and the in conversation with one of my personal heroes, or heroines, Edna Adan. I met Edna earlier this year at a conference at the New Africa Forum in Gabon, and the conference was good on many levels, but it was row after row after row of men speaking, and Edna was on the platform, but probably one of the most powerful moments of the conference was when Edna gave a provocation from the floor. And it was kind of after that I was just determined to get her to come and speak, and I'm really pleased. So thank you very much for coming. I know you've had a very long journey, so thank you very much. Edna's going to, in a few minutes, talk for about 10 minutes about the work that she does. Then we're going to do a quick interview, and then there will be plenty of time afterwards for audience Q&A. So Edna is a woman of many firsts, I think. She was the first person in Somaliland to publicly stand up against FGM as a member of the World Health Organization, foreign minister and the only woman minister of Somaliland. She was also the former First Lady of Somaliland and the first person to represent Somaliland in the UN. And according to this, the first person in Somaliland to drive a car. Guilty. And later still, Edna sold that car to fulfill the dream of building Somaliland's first maternity hospital, which opened in 2002, and is now on a mission to train 1,000 fully qualified midwives across Somaliland and 1 million midwives for Africa. Edna is a tireless campaigner and an incredibly engaging speaker and all-round powerhouse. Her campaign and the way that she goes about it also speaks to me very personally, because my own mother died in childbirth. And so as a fellow East African woman, I'm really, really honoured to have Edna here to speak today.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. And it's a great honour and a pleasure to be here. And it's quite ironic, almost 60 years to the day, I was here at the Royal Festival Hall as a student selling programs for a charity. And little did I know that 60 years later I'd be here with great people like you speaking about my life, because at that time I didn't know what kind of a life I was going to have. I was here to study nursing, and my whole life and my ambition was just to become a nurse. That was the extent of my ambition. But then opportunities present themselves. And I graduated, specialized in midwifery, found the great passion of my life, delivering babies, and went home in 1961 as the first qualified nurse midwife. That was just after my country had become independent. It was former British Somaliland Protectorate. It was part of a great big British Empire, which I hope will not become splintered. None of my business. I take that back. And then I realized that what we were lacking in my country was trained health professionals. I was trained at the Hammersmith Hospital, Lewisham Hospital, great hospitals in the United Kingdom, where everything was in place, expertise was available. If complications presented themselves, there was always a solution. There was always somebody higher up to refer people to. And when I went home, I was, as the Americans say, where the buck stopped. A woman had a problem, they brought her to me. A woman was bleeding, they brought her to me. She needed C-sections, she was brought to me. And I thought, I'm not trained for this. I'm a nurse, I'm a midwife. I cannot do a cesarean section. But what I could do was train as many more midwives as I could, pass on to them the skills that had been taught to me. Things progress, you get married, opportunities, careers, the United Nations, diplomatic services, the boutiques and the duty-free privileges and all the things that come with it. First-class travel, sometimes even, Air Force One, presidential, presidential aircrafts, United States. And then my country went to war because we had united with our neighboring country, Somalia, went to war to try and regain our own self-determination. And I think you have a picture here in the background, which is one of the reasons why I went home after I retired. That shows the picture of a hospital that was bombed in a civil war. Now, who bombs hospitals? Who bombs schools? Who bombs civilian dwellings? I guess people who go to war do that. At that time, I was a very senior diplomat with WHO, based in Djibouti, from 91 to 97, at a time when the Horn of Africa was going through a lot of turmoil, a lot of changes. There was a war in Ethiopia, Eritrea, there was a war across the Red Sea from Djibouti, in Yemen, there was war in Djibouti itself, and then of course there was the big war in Somalia and between Somalia and Somaliland. As a senior UN diplomat, I was sent to Somaliland to assess the situation, and this is what I found. And I thought, oh my God, here I am worrying about what color, what make a watch I'm going to buy, or what make of a car I'm going to have, and how many cylinders does it have. And this is how my people live. My people had no water. The country had no food. The country was strewn with landmines. A lot of war victims, a lot of human remains were still visible. A lot of tanks, armored vehicles, cannons, heavy equipment, expensive equipment. And I thought, oh my God, I cannot turn away. I cannot go too far away from this. But what could I do? The problems were many. And I thought, I will concentrate on the one thing I know what to do about. I will concentrate on the health of women and children. I'm a midwife. I know what to do for a woman who's pregnant. I know how to get that baby out. I know how to take care of that baby. And that's what I'm going to concentrate on. I will build a hospital that will give a safe place for women to come and have their babies. That was really, in fact, the sum total of my ambition at that time. So in 1997, when I retired, and I cashed in my terminal benefits, my repatriation grant, sold all the things that I had no need for, what am I going to do with a washing machine in a country that has no electricity? What am I going to do with a microwave? What am I going to do with so many of the trinkets that I had and surrounded myself with when the country I was going to had no roads, had nothing to make me use all those things that I had surrounded myself with. So I just recycled my whole life, just recycled everything I had into cold cash and went home. And got out of my air-conditioned car, my air-conditioned offices, left my very vast and efficient UN staff, and set myself up under the shade of a tree and started to build a hospital. Applied for one, which of course said, well, why do you want to build a hospital? You can't build a hospital. What makes you want to do that? And I said, well, if you were a country that had hospitals, then I wouldn't be coming here to build one. But since you do not have hospitals, and you do not have a maternity hospital, be grateful that there is one crazy old woman who wants to do one for you. So that's how it started. I was given a land that had once been a killing ground, that had once been a cemetery, that had once been a military parade ground, that had once known all kinds of human injustice. And at first I thought, come on, I can't build a hospital on a site that's so, that has such a, gruesome and morbid past. I want to give you a hospital. A hospital should be clean and white and sterile, and you want to give me a garbage dump? Because that's what it eventually had become. And the answer was, that's the only land we have for you. So if you want to build a hospital, that's what we can give you. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with this mountain of garbage? What am I going to do with... So they said, well, okay, we'll bulldoze it for you, and we'll cart it away, and which is what the government did. 32 truckloads of garbage were hauled away from that land, and God sent the rains, and today I live on it, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. That's where I live. I visit here. I visit world capitals. But that's where I really live. Broke the ground, started to build a hospital. It took 4 years, and my office was, as I said, the shade of a tree. And then somebody took pity on me and said, well, yeah, come on, you can't keep moving your seat from one shade, one side of the tree to the other. So they built a little hut for me with cardboard boxes, and that was my office. And that's where I held court. And that's where I discussed construction with my construction crew. And that's where the foreman came and talked to me about, how many kilos of nails he needed, and how many planks of wood, and how many millimeter iron bars he needed. And I learned so much about construction. 4 years later, the hospital was completed. Today, that hospital is a teaching hospital. Today, we also have a university that is 2 years old. I know I'm crazy, but then that's my passion. And my passion, of course, is to try and pass on my example to others. And if I can teach others what you can do with your determination. An old woman at 60, retired, going back to Somaliland, a war-torn country, and to build a hospital. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. Today, I have some of my young graduates are teaching. And I just sit in the background, and it brings tears to my eyes, because one of the surgeons in my hospital today, who's operating and who's putting shunts into the heads of little children born with hydrocephalus, is a young nurse, among the first nurses I trained there, who I almost kicked out because she was so small and she was so young, and I kept saying, oh my God, let her come back in 3 years, 4 years' time. There's nothing I can do with this child. She's too young, let her grow. And my staff was saying, but she got good grades. She passed the entrance exam. And I said, well, come on, she'll pass the entrance exam again in 3 years' time, in 4 years' time. Let her grow up. Let her come back. And sometimes you say, thank God I was wrong. Because somehow I just, okay, all right, I give in, but she won't last. She did. She graduated among the top 5 of the class 3 years later. She stayed on to do midwifery, and again remained among the top tiers, and then went to medical school, and became one of the first female doctors in Somaliland. Today, that little girl, who I almost kicked out of my training school, is a surgeon. Aren't you glad you're wrong sometimes? What I try to do is I try to leave with my people the gift of knowledge, the gift of hope, the gift of determination, perseverance, and looking for something to improve. Look around and say, okay, this is working well. Can we make it work even better? Aim for excellence. Aim for perfection. Aim to inspire others. That's the gift I want to leave behind. It's not that beautiful Mercedes, and every time I see a beautiful Mercedes, oh God, I used to have one of those. But I want to be surrounded by people like Dr. Shukri, who I say, thank God for people like her, because she is making a difference in the lives of so many and such a role model. I don't know how I'm doing with the time I'm given, but I could talk forever about my hospital. So what I'm going to do is I'll have Chris over there to show you a series of pictures that will take you to breaking the ground of the hospital, laying the foundation, and building and building and building the completed hospital, and then some of the students who graduated from that hospital. Today there are over a couple of hundred midwives in Somaliland who are so efficient. But my aim, as Hannah said, is to train 1,000 midwives, because the few who we have trained remain in big cities. But what about the women in villages? What about the women in places where there are no roads? What about the women who are in towns where there are no hospitals? And if Somaliland can do it, anybody can do it. And if God in His grace gives me time and life, that's the ambition I have set myself. Maybe some would say, I've set myself an ambition to have $1 million. I'd like 1 million midwives. And before I can get there, I would also like 12 school teachers to come and help me teach. Because knowledge is the biggest gift and the most precious gift we can leave for our people. I would be happy to, I think you've run through the pictures, and I think we'll follow that up with the real passion, training, teaching. These are some of my staff, some of my nurses, some of my midwives, and we can show the others. That's among the first group of trainees, and Dr. Shukri is among one of the girls there. And the girls in red are the community midwives. These are the ones I would like to spread out throughout the country. And of course, we now have graduates from the university who have Bachelor of Science degrees. And we do not discriminate against boys, because we also need nurses, because now we have male patients as well. We have pharmacists, and lab technicians, and doctors. And of course, a sick person needs a health professional, whether it's a man or a woman. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is baby number 1. Little Mr. Harir, who's 14 years old now, and whose ambition is to become a medical doctor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edna. That's incredible. Can you just say a little bit more about why midwives specifically, and how many lives, for example, you would estimate would be saved by better equipped medical and particularly maternal health care?
Well, midwives, because I'm a midwife. If I were a carpenter, I'd be making tables or whatever. But I'm a midwife. And Africa, and particularly Somaliland, has one of the world's highest maternal mortality rates in the world. Women are dying of causes that no woman should die of. Women are dying of infections related to their childbirth. Women are dying of hemorrhage. Women are dying of obstructed labor. Women are dying of eclampsia. No woman in this day and age should die of eclampsia, because we do have tools and the skills to identify and see which pregnant woman has a blood pressure that is rising above the normal. And we have the skills and the knowledge to be able to manage that rising blood pressure in this pregnant woman. But women in countries like mine do not have that. And that's why we have the world's highest maternal mortality rate. With skilled birth attendants, we can save 60%. We can address 60 or 70% of the complications associated with pregnancy. Women who attend prenatal care or are seen by a midwife during pregnancy can have many of their problems corrected before they go to full term. If they're anemic, their anemia is corrected. If that woman has a contracted pelvis, a person who is a midwife will advise her about not trying to have that baby the normal way, because that woman would need a cesarean section. So the sooner she goes to a place where a cesarean section would be available, the better. Not wait until the last minute when she's obstructed and the baby's died and she's bleeding and her uterus is rupturing and you start looking for where do we take her. That's not a solution. The solution is getting that woman to a place where she can be helped when she needs help in good time. Now with midwives and my hospital, I mean, we have an operating theater, we have a blood bank, we have a resident doctor 24 hours a day. And by the way, it's not only a maternity hospital, it's a general hospital. We have been able to reduce maternal mortality of the Somali woman, which was supposed to be 1,600 per 100,000 live births, to less than 40. That's 1/4 of the maternal mortality rate of the Somali woman has been reduced by just having trained health professionals and the ability to respond to an emergency when the emergency arises. So that's why we're training midwives, and that's why we wish to train as many midwives as we can. I'll give you an example of the kind of problems we see, and I don't want to scare you away who's coming to volunteer with us. Be prepared to see a woman brought to you who delivered 5 days ago and who still has a placenta inside her. 5 days, not 5 hours, 5 days. And she lived. You try dealing with women who've had obstructed labor, and the baby's been sitting there at the door, not being able to come out for 5 or 6 days. The baby is dead, of course, but in the meantime, it has also destroyed the urethra, a passage for the urine, and a hole develops there that makes that woman develop a fistula. And a fistula is one of the things you never want to see, ever. A woman who's not able to control her urine. We wouldn't be sitting here if our urine were leaking. We'd be dripping all over the place. We'd be smelling. We'd be ostracized. We'd be sent to a little hut as far away as the family as possible. You don't want to see that. But then if you do not have proper maternity care, that's the result you see. You don't want to see a woman who has a transverse lie with a prolapsed arm, and the only person that woman had to deliver her was her 9-year-old child. And with the prolapsed arm, all the mother could say to her 9-year-old daughter is, pull, pull. And you pull, you know what happens. The arm comes off. That's gruesome, but that's the reality. And it's not why these things are happening. It's what can we do about these things. And every day in my life, I say, thank God. I just celebrated my 77th birthday. And it's only, it's when I see a woman like that survive, or a woman with a fistula heal and go home dry, then I say my life has been worth living. Not because of all the trinkets I've had in the past. I go down the little market and I get something for £2. It shines just as much. So what? So what? I said, that's what life is all about. And if I can inspire others to come home and share whatever skills you have with your people, I think this world would be a better place. There's so many trying to destroy this poor little planet. there's got to be a few determined ones to try and do something about it. Let's become the fixers. Let's become the healers. Let's become the ones who solve problems, not cause problems. But we have a long way to go in childcare. We have a long, long way to go. And that's something that's waiting for the next generation. If I can, my little hospital, it's small. We have, I think, 3 of the only premature baby incubators in the country. Now, when I was training at the Hammersmith, if I told them then, if somebody had put 3 babies in the same incubator, they would have been shot at dawn. But we have to do that because I have 3 babies and I have 1 incubator, so it's either putting them all 3 together and hoping for the best or putting 2 of them on the street. Very often we do what we can and as best as we can. The moral of the story is doing it the best way you can. It reminds me of that little story. May I?
You may, of course.
That little hummingbird. There's a forest fire. There's a little fire starting somewhere in the corner of the forest. And as soon as the smoke is seen, the lions run away, the elephants run away, the hippos, the rhinos, the giraffes, the monkeys, everything, they run away in the opposite direction. And a couple of 100 yards down, there's a little river. And there's a little hummingbird that's flying to the little river, picking up a few drops of water and dropping it, and back, and dropping it on the fire, and dropping it. And the lions and the elephants laugh. They say, "Come on, hummingbird, you cannot put a fire out with those few drops of water you carry in your beak." And the hummingbird said, "Maybe not, but at least I'm not running away, and I'm doing my best." So it's the story of that hummingbird. We try to do our best. It's not going to put all the fire out. It's not going to solve all the problems of Africa, but at least a few drops from many beaks will solve some of our problems.
Beautiful place to end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.